Hey, welcome. Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. We're going to be talking about, can immigrants invest? Let me just get started. Okay, so welcome. Hope everyone is doing well. This is Adina here from Immigrant Finance. A little bit about me and immigrant finance, and then I'll jump into the topic for today of, can immigrants invest? So my name is Adina again. I started the immigrant finance platform with my husband, Mauricio, who's an immigrant from Ecuador, after he came to the US in 2013. And we really struggled a lot with finances and figuring out whether he could do basic things like have an bank account or credit card or invest. There was no information out there anywhere on the internet that we could find on these topics. And I was actually studying to be an immigration lawyer at the time. I was in law school, and I still had a hard time figuring out the answers to these questions of whether immigrants can have bank accounts, whether they can invest, things like that. So we started with sharing everything we were learning on this topic, really researching and talking to as many people as we could. We started blogging about the topic of finances for immigrants over at immigrantfinance.com. Hey, Monty, thanks for joining. And we, have since built the platform to do lives like this, where we can provide more information to folks in the community. We've got the Immigrant Finance podcast, and we have group coaching programs and online courses that go more in depth, that teach you how to do all of these things based on what we've learned. So I am so excited to be talking to you today more about investing and whether immigrants can invest. Now, there's a really big misconception out there that people think that if you're an immigrant, you can't invest or you can't do other things in the financial system. And that's actually not true. So the good news here, I'm here to share, is immigrants absolutely can invest regardless of their immigration status. You don't need to be a US citizen. You don't need to have a green card to invest. You don't need a visa. What you need to have is some type of identification number with the federal government. So either a ITIN number, which stands for Individual Tax Identification Number, which millions and millions of undocumented immigrants have and use to pay taxes, or a social security number is another option. You need one of those two to open an investment account, and you need to have lived in the US for most of the year, the past few years, to meet certain requirements to show that you are really someone residing in the US. You need an address, right? And there's some other basic things, but this is something that immigrants can do. And so let's talk a little bit more about, like, really what are the reasons holding back immigrants from investing? Because that's always the first question I get from people, like, am I even allowed to? And the answer is yes. I'm just checking the chat. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So that's that first question, can I? And we've answered that question, that immigrants can invest. And if you have any questions about whether you personally can invest, reach out to, you can reach out to me. You can book a consult with us over immigrantfinance.com/consult. You can talk to an accountant. You can ask around with the immigration lawyer and help you figure that out personally. Now, the next questions that come up are like, am I someone who can invest? And a lot of it is mindset related. So I talk to people almost every day who want to be investing, but they're afraid, or they want to be investing and they're ready to take the steps, but they can't actually see themselves as an investor. And one of my clients I was speaking to the other day put it really well. She was just like, the way we grew up, it was always like the rich white people who were the ones that invested and owned property and do things like that. She's like, my family, we just don't see ourselves that way. And so it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of being brave to be willing to see yourself as an investor. And that's really what I wanted to talk about more today. having the strength to do that, because it is scary to go outside your comfort zone and to do something, especially if you're the first in your family. You know, most of the students we work with in our immigrant finance school program, they're the first ones in their family ever to be investing in the stock market. And they're terrified because they don't know how. And, you know, they've been told by family members that this is something really risky, that it's like gambling, right? That they're going to lose all their money. And so there's a lot of fear that comes with that. Like, no one wants to lose all their money, right? But it's good to keep in mind that there's different types of investing in the stock market. So there are ways of doing it that are really risky that people do. Like when you hear people day trading and trading stocks all day and trying to beat the numbers and beat the rates and get the hottest prices, or even like Bitcoin, the big phase about Bitcoin. Some people may say that's very risky because it just hasn't been around long enough for us to really know the long-term rates of performance. So please know there's also more conservative types of investing that have been historically proven over the past 100 years to have very good performance, where you can be investing in the stock market as a whole and spreading out the risk. So instead of investing in like one company, like buying an investment buying stocks with like Nike or Apple, right? You can also invest in something called index funds, which allows you to invest in many, many companies at once so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's the type of long-term conservative investing that we teach in our program, where we want you to be investing and building wealth, not to try to beat the market and risk everything, but instead to be investing for the long term, for decades, for your retirement, for your children's college, for your to give passed down to your children and the next generations. We're talking about investing to build generational wealth and doing that type of investing that has been established for decades and decades and decades to have very high rates of performance. So for example, investing the total stock market over the past 100 years has an average rate of return between 7 to 12% rate of return. That is extremely high. It's tough to beat that, I can tell you, because look at, for example, what interest rate are you getting in your bank account? Now, most bank accounts, the interest rate is like 0.0001% or 0%, right? Even if you've got a really competitive bank account, like with a high yield savings account, the interest rate's probably right now going to be around something like 0.5% or 0.6%. That's kind of along the lines of the best you can get. Now compare that to getting 7 to 12% just in the stock market by just doing conservative long-term investing. That is a huge difference. And that is really how people are able to build wealth, by getting that rate of return. That's how people are able to make money when they're sleeping through passive income. And that's how people are able to end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars or even over $1 million just by investing a very small amount each month, like $200 a month, right? And allowing time for the market to grow, for your money to grow. That's what it's all about with investing. Now, I see we have some folks live. Ayoba, thank you for joining. Jacqueline, thank you for joining. Tom, Zip Jackson, Art Paget, Monse, Yesenia, thank you all for being here. Traveler's Coffee Cup. Now, if any of you have any questions about investing for immigrants, go ahead and put it in the comments, and I can respond. Try to respond while I'm talking here. And just thank you all so much for taking the time to learn more about this important topic of investing for immigrants. So let's talk a little bit too about why it's actually it can be less risky than we think. Maybe when it comes to immigrants who are undocumented or who have a temporary status or have a pending status, how that can look like for investing, because there's a lot of fear anytime you are giving your information. I know as an immigration lawyer, I've worked with hundreds of undocumented immigrants. I know the fear that comes up when you have any interaction with major institutions, whether it's financial institutions or the government or with the IRS. And so investing can trigger that for a lot of people, right? And that's totally fair and understandable and not your fault, right? But let's talk about a little bit what that actually means to be investing and how that relates to the immigration laws, because that is something a lot of people are nervous about. So I just want to point out that the tax system is, and the system where, you know, you would be applying for or using an ITIN, which is a type of identification number people can get if they don't have social security numbers, through the IRS. That whole system and using that ITIN to invest in the stock market, all of that is completely separate from the immigration laws. It's a totally different system. And there's actually very strict privacy laws in place that the IRS has, where they're not allowed to share people's information, even with other agencies, right? So that's why you see millions and millions of undocumented immigrants who have ITINs, who pay taxes every year and don't have immigration consequences for it. Now, I am a lawyer here, so of course I'm gonna not say like there could never be any consequence, right? Anything can happen, and we did see under the Trump administration that a lot of things happened that we didn't expect that were really scary for the immigrant community. So I don't want to make any false promises, right? But I do want to point out that there is that clear legal separation from information going to the IRS, to other agencies, and from the immigration officials. And to change that, there would actually need to be a new law passed by Congress. The president likely could not do that on their own. It would need to be a new law passed by Congress, agreed upon by both chambers of Congress, by the Senate and the House of Representatives, to change those privacy laws. And let's talk for a second about incentives, because the government has very strong incentives not to do that. The reason is they want your tax money, right? They don't want all of the immigrants who are paying taxes every year, being good citizens, right? Paying taxes even though they're not even going to get the benefits from it. They don't want to stop doing that. They don't want to lose that money. So the government has, in my view, no incentive to do anything that would scare off immigrants from paying taxes and getting ITINs, because that's how they get their money. That's how the government makes their money, is taxes. So if you think about that, right, it can help you see that, you know, there's these privacy laws and protections in place that keep information that the IRS has for tax purposes, for ITINs, separate from the immigration system. So when you hear people who are afraid to get an ITIN or to invest because of immigration reasons, tell them that. Help your family understand that, right? Help them see that there is that separation there, right? And so that's why you see immigrants who get ITINs, who use their ITINs to have bank accounts, to have credit cards, to invest, and they're able to do that because of those systems being very separate. So I hope that clears that up for people, of how there is that separation between the immigration and the tax systems. The other piece of this is, don't let what the immigration laws and the systems get in the way of you building your wealth, of you building your confidence, of your self-worth, right? Of your financial plan and your money mindset. There are so many terrible, horrible, violent, racist things in part of the immigration system, we all know, that can affect people so much who are going through that system. It can affect your self-worth, your self-confidence, your ability to see yourself as someone who can be financially strong and powerful, right? And you can't let that happen. You can't listen to those messages and let them hold you back from reaching your potential, from building the wealth you deserve to have, for building the wealth that your family deserves to have, right? So if anyone is telling you you can't be an investor, right, because you're an immigrant, that, first of all, it's not true. And second of all, stand up to them and say, of course I can. Of course, I have every right to invest just like any other person. This has nothing to do with my immigration status or the immigration laws. I know I'm getting into a bit of like an immigration law lesson here, but I want to start talking about this with you all more to really break it down, since I do have that perspective as an immigration lawyer. I'm a practicing immigration lawyer at a nonprofit. I'm dealing with this stuff all the time, and it breaks my heart when I hear people who are afraid to invest because of the immigration laws, because we all know the immigration laws are morally wrong and they need to be changed. And to let that be a reason to hold you back because of mindset reasons is just not fair to yourself. You deserve more than that. And so if you just think, when you hear of investors, you think of people who are citizens, people who are white, people who have a lot of money. It can be you too. There's nothing stopping you from doing it except for your own beliefs about whether you can be that too. And we've been able to help so many immigrants start investing now at this point by working with us through our Immigrant Finance School program, that I can now confidently say and tell you that there's lots of people doing it who are learning to invest and who are getting over those mindset traps and what they've been told, growing up, and what people in society has told them, what the immigration laws have told them. And they're taking action anyway because they believe in themselves and they believe in what they and their families deserve. So if that's you, if you want more, if you want to be able to have more options and choices, if you want to be able to have a retirement plan and not have to be working till you're 70, breaking your back, like if you want to be able to start making money while you're sleeping through your investments growing, then please think about starting to invest, because this is going to give you so much more power and financial stability. It's very hard to build wealth just by saving money in a bank account or just by holding on to money, onto cash, like in your home. The reason is inflation. So with inflation, the value of the dollar is decreasing over time. That's why things get more expensive over time. If you hear of like someone who was able to buy a candy bar in 1920 or something for like 5 cents, and now it's like $2, $3. I don't know how much they cost. But that's why. It's because of inflation. The value of the dollar goes down. And statistically, we can assume that the dollar is going down every year at a rate of 3%. That's the rate of inflation each year on average. And knowing that, that means that when your money is sitting in a bank account or in cash, it's losing value at 3% every year. Every year you're losing money by doing that. Yes, it's important to have your money in a bank account, right, for emergencies. You need to have an emergency fund. You need to have like a basic amount of cash to make sure you can cover your expenses each month, right? But beyond that, once you've saved up an emergency fund, there's no reason to be keeping money in a bank account unless you're going to need it in the near future. Like there can be exceptions. Let's say you're going to buy a house in a year or something, right? That's a short-term saving. You wouldn't want to like risk all that because you need it soon, and by putting that all in the stock market. But besides that, like for things that are long-term, your money is just losing value by being in a bank account or in cash. It's losing value at a rate of 3%, like I said. And if you're getting interest in your bank account, it's not going to keep up with that even. You're still going to lose value. So I mentioned earlier how in like even a high yield savings account, one of the most competitive interest rates, you're still going to get an interest rate that's really low. It's still going to be probably at most something like 0.5 or 0.6%. That's still under the 3% rate of inflation that your money is losing value. So the only way to keep up with inflation is to be investing your money. Hey, Yazzie, welcome. So the only way to be keeping up with inflation is investing your money. And that's also the only way to beat inflation. Now, there's many kinds of investments. It doesn't just have to be in the stock market, but the stock market is one of those essential pieces that you need to have in your investment portfolio because it's very difficult to build wealth without investing. If you look at the wealthiest people out there, they all have investments in the stock market, and that's how they've been able to grow their wealth because of that high rate of return. I mentioned somewhere between 7 to 12% on average when you do like conservative total stock market investing, right? That it's going to be growing significantly over time. That really adds up. That's how people like I said, by just investing a small amount each month, can grow their investments to thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So think about that. If it's staying in cash, it's losing value and it's not keeping up with the market. The only way to to keep up with inflation and beat inflation is investing in the stock market. There's other types of investing besides the stock market too. For example, investing in real estate, investing in a business, right? Investing in yourself and your own knowledge. There's never any better investment than that, right? But you need to have investing in the stock market as part of your portfolio, particularly to have a retirement plan. It's really expensive for retirement in the US, especially if you're not going to be getting Social Security benefits, or if you have family members who you're going to have to be supporting in their retirement and they don't have Social Security benefits. This can be expensive. And so by investing, you can leverage your money and help it grow so that you have more money and you can handle those responsibilities and have a plan. One other mindset thing I want to mention is just like, there can be this idea that, why would I put all my hard-earned money somewhere where I can't touch it, just for when I'm old, just for in retirement. I want to enjoy my life now. I work hard. I totally get that. That's how my husband Mao thinks. And when he first came to this country, he really didn't want to be investing because he's like, that's risky. That's like gambling. He didn't understand it. They don't really do investing in his family where he's from in Ecuador. And so something very new. We had to talk about it for years for him to understand it and get more comfortable. And then his other thing was like, but I'm working so hard and I'm like, working all the time. Why would I do this just so that in retirement I can have the money? Like, what about now? And he's like, I don't even know if I'm going to be alive then. Like, I'm working so hard, I probably won't even make it that far. So if you felt that way, comment and let me know, because I know that very well from talking him through that for many years. And, what I think he finally started to realize was like, I can do both. Like, I can, through my budget, plan for money to enjoy now and also plan for my future. So I'm not screwed later in life by starting to do a little bit of investing. And so the key is really just to get started, take those baby steps. And just start a little bit and get comfortable with it. Start to see the numbers rising, start to see how it feels, start to understand it better. And then you can increase your investments as you get more comfortable. And so what happened with Mao was like, once his investments started growing, which happened pretty quickly, and he started realizing he was getting free money by doing nothing, by just letting his investments sit in the market and grow and adding more to it each month. Then he started having momentum building. So that's a really key thing that you want to allow to happen when you invest, is let the momentum start building. Like, don't pull out after a month because you haven't made anything yet. Like, wait 6 months to a year for the investments to start building. And then you will see that you have momentum and that you see the money growing. You're going to be so excited by it that you will want to invest more. I see someone made a comment, investing is risky, but it's just rewarding. But the goal is to have something stable for when you're older and making it easier when you can't work anymore. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Traveler's Coffee Cup. Yeah, I've talked to so many people who are like, my dad is 70 years old and working hard labor in construction all day. Like, I don't want to be like that. And I don't want him to have to be like that. This is how you get out of that, is by investing and starting young and doing it consistently every month for decades. Your money's going to grow so that you have a really nice nest egg in retirement that you can live off of and not have to be working. That's what we're talking about. And this is so important for immigrants because this country treats immigrants, as we all know, as like a source of cheap labor, right? As a source of labor to do all of the work, all the hard work being done in this country is mostly being done by immigrants. If you look at who are the people cleaning houses, who are the people taking care of the elderly, who are the people taking care of people's children, who are the people washing the dishes in the restaurants, right? Who are the people building houses and construction in the future? Like, it's a lot of immigrants. And it's such incredible work that the immigrant community is doing for this country, but they deserve to have the fruits of that labor too. They deserve to not just have to build stuff for other people at their own expense and then have nothing to show for it in retirement because they haven't been investing. So the way to get out of that is to be starting to invest. I see Byros had a comment. My mom has never been in the U.S., but she is close to retirement. Can she invest in the U.S. stock market if she gets an ITIN? That's a really good question. Shoot me a message about it. Let's talk some further. But a quick, short answer is you do need to have an address in the U.S. And be residing in the U.S. to open an investment account. There are some ways to do it from abroad, but it's very, very tricky. So she probably will need that to be living here as well to get the ITIN. So we can talk more about it. Shoot me a message. But that's another reason, like if you are in the US and you don't have status and you worry about having to leave someday or being deported, right? That's another reason to open an investment account now while you're in the US, because it is much harder from abroad. So once you open it in the US, that account can remain open if you have to leave the country. So another reason to do it as soon as possible. Let's talk about also why it's important to not wait and to start investing as soon as possible, because there's no better time to start than now. The reason is that the key to building wealth through investing is time in the market. Because you need that time for the money to grow. It's really not about how much you're investing, right? You don't need a lot of money to invest and build wealth through investing. It's about doing it consistently every month so that your investments can grow because of something called compound interest. Compound interest is basically that the interest that you get in your investments, which is the same as interest you would get in like a bank account if you get interest at all. It's the money that the investment companies are paying you as a thank you for investing with them. That money also earns interest. And so when that happens, your interest is earning interest when you're investing. And then your investments are just exponentially growing. Hey, Leah, thanks for joining. And hey, Jocelyn. So your investments are exponentially growing through compound interest when you're investing. I heard someone say this recently that I just love. It's basically like your money is making babies. Like your money is just making more money while you're sleeping when you're investing. And so this is part of like that radical act of resistance I'm talking about here that immigrants need to be taking, where you're going to say, I'm not just a worker. I'm not just someone else's labor. I'm an investor. I own part of the US economy, right? And I get to make money when I'm not working too. You want to get out of a place where you're only able to make money by trading time for money, by working hour by hour, by doing hard labor, by having to work 3 jobs, by having to work multiple hours a day, having 14-hour days. Investing allows you to step out of that and have your money work for you. And that is a very empowering act of resistance to take, right? So that's the reason why it makes sense to start investing as soon as possible, because the earlier you start, the more your money's going to start growing because of that compound interest. It's something that takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And we're talking about here sustainable investing for a lifetime, investing for the next generation, investing for your retirement. So like decades and decades of conservative, sustainable investing is going to allow your money to grow where you can be in a place where you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really just math at a certain point. It's about having that time in the market. So some people think that they have to wait because they have to save money to invest. Not true. You can start with $5 a month. You can do something called fractional shares where you're investing like whatever amount of money you can. You decide the number. So you don't need to wait until you have a lot of money to invest. It's better to start now so that the little money you do have, even if it's $5, can start growing, and that you can start consistently every month investing, even just small amounts. It can grow significantly. Another belief people have is they have to wait to invest because they have debt. That's not true either. First of all, you see wealthy people investing all the time who have debt. They have debt on their mortgages, right? From properties they own. They have debt from loans they take out for their businesses to grow and scale their businesses to make more money. They know how to leverage debt to make more money, and they don't wait to invest, right? Because they know if they waited, they would miss out on that time in the market, right? So don't feel like you have to wait till you pay off all your debt to start investing. You can do both at the same time. You can have two goals, right? And you also don't want to just be giving all your money away to someone else. So you don't want to just give all your money away to the credit card companies, because that's not serving you. I mean, it's serving you in the sense it's paying down your debt, which is important, right? But it's not building your future. So put yourself first and invest as well as pay off your debt. Another belief that's common that holds people back from investing is that we started talking about a little bit is just this idea of like, I'm not an investor. Like, I'm not allowed to be investing because people like me don't invest. No one in my community invests. I would be the first to do it in my family. So let me tell you that it's not your fault. You weren't taught how to do it and you don't have examples. It's not your fault. And just because you're the first doesn't mean you can't do it. You're going to be a leader for your family. I can't tell you how many people we've worked with who open their investment accounts, learn how, and then at the same time teach their family members how to do it and help them get their accounts open. And it's just incredible. They are literally changing the next generation. They're changing like the generational wealth pathway. They're changing the legacy of their family. They're putting their family in a position where they're going to be building wealth. And you can't hold yourself back just because other people around you aren't doing something. You can't let other people determine your fate. What you want to do is be the leader and be a model for others, even if they're telling you, oh, this isn't a good idea, this is risky, because they don't understand why investing is so important. And they, haven't taken the time to learn about it like you're doing right now. You'll see that by just starting and showing them, that you're learning how to do it, they're going to start to have to be like, well, how can I do that too? That's usually what happens to people we work with who have family members who resist or question it. Once they see that the person is actually feeling confident and their money is growing, they start to warm up and they're like, okay, how would I do this too? And if they don't, not every family member is going to, that's okay. You can change the behaviors for the next generation. And it's also going to put you in a more stable place where, if you are going to be supporting that family member, let's say it's a parent in retirement, you're going to be in a position where you're more financially stable and you have more resources to do that. So those are some thoughts I wanted to share today about investing. If anyone's got questions, just pop it in the comments there. And you can also reach out and talk further. We offer free 30-minute consultations. I'm going to just put the link up for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube. So got the link right there. You can do a complimentary 30-minute financial strategy consult with us at immigrantfinance.com/consult. And we also have a free masterclass that goes much more in depth to what I just talked about on investing. That's at investing masterclass. I'm sorry, I'm reading it. .immigrantfinance.com. Go ahead and check that out. That will also add you to get our weekly newsletter. Every Friday, we have resources and inspiration that goes out for immigrants and their families who want to be building wealth. So thank you all so much for being here. If you have any questions, you can also just shoot us a DM at Immigrant Finance on Instagram or Facebook. Would be happy to talk further and support you, because it is so important that we have more immigrants and family members of immigrants taking steps to start investing so we can change some of this wealth gap that exists and give people more options. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the immigration laws say, what you can do is take your finances into your own hands. That's something that you have control over, that's going to give you more options and choices. And investing is one of the most important ways to do that. So thank you all so much. Take care and have a great rest of your